In our last session, we talked about the learning objectives, criteria for success, and summative assessments that serve as that overarching framework for your unit. Now we get to get into the actual fun stuff. In this session, we're going to talk about materials and resources and how we break that out into individual lessons to ensure our students' success. So, when we say materials, we're really talking about the texts, the technologies, the tools, the things that we're using to allow our students to learn a new concept and be successful and showcase their mastery. Here's why material selection is important. The materials that you introduce to your students are ultimately going to allow them to gain access to information that they hadn't previously had. When you're selecting materials, you need to make sure that number one, they're high quality. And number two, they fit within that alignment piece that we talked about previously. Does it make sense to introduce this concept using this material? Have a discerning eye when you're looking at materials, and don't accept anything just because you found it on the internet. Make sure that it's something that, as we said, is going to be grade level appropriate for your kids, is something that's going to be engaging, and ultimately helps them move from those learning objectives all the way to a successful summative assessment. Here's what this could look like in a fifth grade classroom. You as the teacher could have some manipulatives. So that could be a number line, those could be fraction tiles, something that the kids can like kinesthetically interact with. You also could provide technology. That could be interactive whiteboards, it could be applications that allow the students to kind of practice and engage with some of the material. Next, you could think about text. Depending on what your curriculum looks like, that could be workbook exercises that you have students completing. As you're working through your planning process, remember that's something in the previous session we said was so important to having a successful classroom. As you're planning and as you're pulling all of these materials that you're going to use with your kids, there's a couple things happening in your brain as the teacher. Number one, you're thinking about your actual kids. You're asking yourself, does this give all of my learners what they need to be successful? So think about accessibility of those materials. If you have a student who's visually impaired, making sure that you have something that's larger print for them to be able to see is going to be important here. Think about the different modalities that kids learn in. Are they able to interact with the material in multiple ways to ensure that no matter how they like to learn, they're going to be able to access the information and be successful? It also is something that we would suggest you organize in advance. So when we say organize in advance, your transitions from one activity to the next are really important in a classroom. You want to make sure that those transitions are smooth and there's not a lot of wasted downtime where you try to access the materials or locate them. So having all of your materials prepped and ready ahead of time is going to be important as well. Now, the material selection is important. As we said, we want to make sure that they're aligned, they're grade level appropriate. You have thought through the supports your students might need to be successful with some of those materials, and that's going to connect us to our next topic. In the next session, we're really going to talk about the actual instructional moves and activities that you're going to make and formative assessment. How formative assessment is different than summative and why it's so important in the learning process.